Hello, everybody. I'm Aaron Merrill, President of Williston Historical Society. I am going to give you a quick rundown of what we did this year because this counts as our annual meeting. So I'm going to read this quickly, and then we'll have a very fast vote for our officers, unless anybody wants to run, and then we'll go from there. Great. So Williston Historical Society hosted many events this year. In March, Elizabeth Allen presented her WHS granted funded research Dangerous Characters, The Life and Crime of Delia and Charlie Potter. The audience learned about Williston's most sensational criminals and their role in the 1865 killing of Sally Griswold, who had gained wealth during the gold rush. In April, with the library here, we co-hosted New Neighbors, The Beavers of Allenbrook, a documentary screening and discussion led by local documentarian Jim Heltz. In June, the WHS celebrated the placement of a Lafayette trail marker on the Village Green, commemorating the 200th anniversary of Lafayette's visit to Williston. Working with the town and school district, we helped approve and install the marker, which was sponsored by the Lafayette Trail, Inc. The dedication event featured remarks from Julian Eicher, a leading expert on the topic, several Lafayette 200 in Vermont actors, and our own historian Richard Allen. On July 4th, we opened the Stovepipe Schoolhouse for visitors before and after the parade, featuring an exhibit for the occasion. In September, we hosted an appraisal day in the community room right here. Appraisers from Merrill's Auction Gallery examined more than 60 items, sharing fascinating insights into local treasures and family heirlooms. In October, we co-hosted the Haunted Library Writing Contest. 2 members served as judges, and we sponsored the prize for the winning story. The prompt, set in the Vermont Room, sparked many creative pieces inspired by our local history. It was really fun to read those essays. The board also met in February, April, June, and September, with much work happening behind the scenes throughout the year. Several members, including Adrian Katz, dedicated many hours reviewing and organizing our collection. We met with a state archivist who provided valuable advice on collection care and the potential for hosting an intern. Thanks to Steve Shepard's research, we identified and purchased a new computer capable of meeting our digitalization needs. We also published 2 fantastic newsletters. Special thanks to Steve Shepard for editing, and to Steve, Richard Allen, and Samantha Ford for contributing their excellent articles. Richard is here today, as I mentioned, and we have several of his books out here for sale, and Richard will autograph that for you at the end of the presentation today. So,
at no extra charge.
No extra charge. And if you have another book, he'll sign that too, whatever he said. There were, of course, countless other contributions from dedicated board members, too many to list individually. We extend our thanks to each of them for their time and commitment to preserving Williston's history. We look ahead to 2026 and the 250th anniversary of the United States. We're excited for the many local and national historical events and opportunities to come. We're always looking for new volunteers. If you're interested or like to learn more, feel free to talk to me or any of the board members who are here today. Or you can send questions to the Williston Historical Society at gmail.com. All right, our election of officers. The following slate of officers is up for election. Aaron Merrill for president, Steve Perkins for vice president, Cameron Clark for secretary, Adrian Katz for archivist, Terry McCaig and John Stokes for treasurer, and Brenda Perkins is our past president. Are there any nominations from the floor for any of these offices? Hearing none, if there are no objections, I will call for a vote on the slate as presented. All in favor of the proposed officers, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? All right, thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Carolyn Gould, the president of the Chittenden County Historical Society.
Hello everyone, what a great turnout. We're so excited about this. As Aaron said, I'm Carolyn Gould. I'm president of the Chittenden County Historical Society. We are an all-volunteer, content-driven organization, which means we don't have a building. We exist in publications and on the web. And virtually all of our funding goes to either supporting original research or disseminating it in some way. And if you join for $25, you will get a free book bag, which you can fold up quite easily, and it's all cotton. So we're always looking for new members, but we're also looking for new research. So if any of you have something that you've been working on or that you would like to share, there are just so many amazing stories in this county, and we will do everything possible to try to share it with the rest of Vermont. Apropos of that, Lucy McCullough received a grant from us last year to help publish her mother's memoirs, history, and to add to it and do some original research to supplement it. And we decided to do a pre-publication preview. And we're thinking of having a book launch. How many of you might go to the airport for a book launch? Oh, okay, I thought maybe you'd go, oh no, parking. Yeah. So it'll be like April maybe, something like that. We're not too sure yet, but stay tuned and we'll let everybody know. And that's about it from me. So please come up, get a card, talk to me, let me know what you're interested in, and we'll see what we can do to explore it. It's my honor to introduce our new board member who's going to be taking over programming and who's going to introduce Lucy. He's just retired and just moved to Vermont and has taken Vermont history on as his passion, which is so great. Anyway, I'm so pleased to introduce Paul Thierman.
Thank you. Thank you, and I want to also acknowledge Carolyn, who's introduced me to a lot of Vermont history already. It's a fascinating topic.
Speak up.
And to Lucy. Lucy McCullough grew up in South Burlington, the daughter of Grace and Harold Pugh. She's been a resident of Williston, though, for the last 62 years. Grace Pugh, her mother, wrote the book Burlington Airport, the first 25 years, for her children and grandchildren to read in the year 2000 or later. Lucy and her sister wanted to pay tribute to their parents by publishing her book, and she reports that she wanted to keep the publication as faithful as possible to her mother's voice while making only a few changes, especially photos, which we'll see today. There'll be time afterwards for questions and refreshments, and please join me in welcoming Lucy McCullough.
So I am Lucy Pugh McCullough, and this is my mother, a photo from my mother, Grace Pugh, and I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what she wrote. So about 50 years ago, she wrote this book, and she witnessed and experienced these 25 years, and she wanted us to know about it, so that's why she recorded it for her family. So she experienced those years, and for 13 of those years, alongside her husband Harold Pugh, who was the manager of the Burlington Airport from 1932 to 1945, and the two of them together helped with the growth and the development of the Burlington Airport in its early years, as well as they really were interested in promoting aviation. It was very important to them at that point. Grace was the first licensed female pilot in the state of Vermont. She got her license in 1938, and coincidentally this photo was taken that same year. As I mentioned, as a tribute, we wanted to have this book published as a tribute to our parents, and with the help of our children and with the help of the Champlain County Chittenden County Historical Society to get it published. So that's wonderful. So today I'm just going to relay bits of this history that she put down on paper. But before I do that, we're going to make a little quick visit to the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport. Just want you to think about what that looks like today with its pretty significant building. It's modern, it has all the amenities you would need, including the parking garage. It's miles of paved runway. Across the way is the National Guards, the Vermont Air National Guard. And to the south is Beta Technology, where they're developing and manufacturing the electric aircraft. There are also a handful of other businesses just south of the airport on the west side of the field there. So while you visualize that, I'm going to take you on a little journey back on a time machine to 106 years ago to 1919. And at that time, John Burns, who was the World War I pilot, and he was also a Burlington commissioner, along with another pilot by the name of Mason Beebe, set out to find a good location for an airfield. It had to fit a certain criteria that they were looking for, and they found a nice piece of land out in middle of farm country, and it wasn't too many miles outside of Burlington, so it seemed to be a really good fit. It was a 75-acre cornfield, and it was just near Route 2 in South Burlington. And John Burns went back to his commissioners that were a little reluctant about whether or not they should have an airport, and convinced them that it was a need. So they did they rented the land for $100 a year. And then they brought out the street department's horse-drawn road grader and a steamroller, and they cleared the field and they rolled it smooth and created an airstrip. They also continued to remove brush and trees, and in August of 1920, the first airplane landed at the Burlington Airport. And this is what Grace wrote about the pilots in the 20s. She says, back in the 20s, the pilots were nearly as free as the birds. They landed where they dared, took off where they could, flew as high as they pleased or as low. There were only a few rules. Only the pilots knew what they were, and they didn't always abide by them. They flew by common sense and the seat of their pants. They often flew instruments. They had few instruments, no radio, no tail wheel, no brakes, and often used automobile gas. They had to be good to survive. Recognized by their helmet and goggles, they appeared to be the daredevils of the sky, subjects of hero worship. This was also a time that she called the golden age of aviation. It was very exciting. Everyone would hear an airplane, they'd run outside to look. They had to see it. It was barnstorming. People would fly airplanes to the different fields in the area, land, and take people up for short rides, paying 25 or 50 cents for a few laps around the field, or they might pay $1 or $2 for a 10-minute ride. Then there were the air meets that were held quite regularly during those early years, and those were competitions for pilots, and they also some of the competitions I wrote down were wing overs, slow rolls, snap rolls, loops, side slips, spins, upside down flying, and air races, parachute jumps, and dead stick landings. So people would watch this, and then they would take rides if they could or could afford it. And it was a way for the pilots to earn a little extra money to pay for their gas and other expenses. And then we're moving on to 1926. Burlington, being in a direct line between New York City and Montreal, was a perfect location to have air stop. The Senator Warren Aiken worked really hard to make Burlington an official port of entry at that point. And so it became the international airport. The Customs and Immigration was in Burlington, and the folks coming down from Canada would have to notify Customs and Immigration ahead of time that they would be arriving, and someone from Burlington would go out and meet them. It was also a time that the metal hangar was bought and installed. And then in 1928, the north-south runway was added and the east-west was enlarged. And as you can tell by this photo, there still are very few homes out there, still pretty much farm country. In 1931, Airport Commissioner A.D. Butterfield advocated for purchase of the land rather than renting it. He also thought there should be someone hired to manage the airport. And there was also a small building moved to the location to serve the pilots. So that's when Grace's family became involved, because her stepfather, who was Arthur Ashley, he was hired as the airport manager, and her brother George Hall was hired as a mechanic. And George was 15 years old, and when he was 18, he was a licensed airline mechanic and I guess aircraft mechanic and aircraft engine mechanic. And he worked at the Burlington Airport for 40 years. Before he retired, he also worked for a few years for Department of Defense at General Electric. He was well-respected mechanic, but he also had a great sense of humor, obviously. And my mother wrote about him. He never minded getting his hands dirty or his feet wet to help the airport grow. Also in 1931, on a frigid afternoon in early winter, Harold Pugh flew from Plattsburgh, New York to Burlington, and he had an appointment in Burlington. So when he returned at the end of the day, his airplane would not get started. It was too cold. He knew that by the time the engine had heated and he could make the return flight, it would be dark. And they didn't fly in darkness because you couldn't navigate and there were no lights for landing. So Arthur Ashley, the manager, invited him down to the family farm in North Ferrisburgh, spend the night and get a fresh start in the morning. And that's when he met my mother. So this is her story, and this is how she wrote it in the book. That evening, we sat around the kitchen table chatting. Harold teased me about teaching and my claim of understanding the science of physics. As a challenge, he asked me, if you were flying from Tennessee to Illinois and there was a low-pressure area nearby, which way would you fly? Would you fly to the east of the low-pressure area or to the west of it? With my index finger, I drew an imaginary picture of a low-pressure cell on a tablecloth. I said to him, well, you would have to fly to the east of the low-pressure area so you would be able to take advantage of the tailwind. Harold was apparently impressed. A few months later, Harold was working for my stepfather at the airport. One Saturday afternoon, Harold flew the Aeromarine Clem, an unusual plywood monoplane, to the family home in North Ferrisburgh. Landing in a nearby meadow, he walked up to the house with a big bundle in his arms. It was an oversized flight suit meant for me. He zipped me into the darn thing, and off we went. We circled around Virginia several times where I taught school. He brought the plane down over the railroad tracks near our farm, made a tight S turn, and landed up abruptly on the meadow. Following in the flying in the Aeromarine was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was fun, it was exhilarating, and that's when I knew I wanted to fly airplanes. So 1932 to 1939 were very, very busy years. There was a lot going on, a lot of progress happening during those years. And the first thing that happened is they were married. And as my mother says, we wanted everyone to love flying and believe in it as we did. And during those years, there was a lot to be done, of course. And she said Harold was all over the place by car, by truck, and by foot. They built a new administration building, they did recurring lengthening and paving of runways, the wooden hangar was installed, teletype communications were installed, there was a radio beam, lighting the field and obstruction markers, wind direction indicators, growing soybeans to keep the dust down, courting Boston, Maine, Central Vermont Airways, and Canadian Colonial Airways, and all the time they were doing their flying school. So Grace was not an employee, she was teaching at the time, but she did all she could to help with the office and airport reports and papers, records at the airport. And the first thing they needed to do was build an administration building. The small building that was moved there in 1931 burned in 1931, so there was no building except for the hangar. And so before they could build the administration building, they needed to build cement blocks because you couldn't go to buy them anywhere. You had to build them. So that was one thing that they did every spare minute. The pilots, whoever was available would build these cement blocks. And Harold is there on the left side, and the fellow sitting in the wheelbarrow with his back to us is Uncle George. The other two men I can't recognize from this photo.
But that's the cemetery, isn't it?
It was near the cemetery, yes, the cemetery, and that's still there, actually. And this is the interior and exterior, the interior of the new terminal, and I guess they call it the administration building. It was completed in 1935, and there was space for the customs office, which was a nice addition, and also the weather service was moved there at that point. And you can see in this photo to the left of this lower photo, the wooden hangar was in progress being built. And that is it completed with some of the airplanes. And air mail service was came in 1935, and there my father is the second one from the right with the cap. They had to build a beacon, and this was an invention my father and Uncle George came up with. Per the specifications from the U.S. Bureau of Air Commerce, it was constructed using an electrical turntable from a window display of a College Street clothing store. A large reflector lined with small mirrors and a 500 candle power bulb. It had a green light on the back and red obstruction light on top. It rotated at a standard rate of 5 turns per minute. It operated from dark until 10 p.m. After that, the plane would buzz around the airport until the manager would light the way, which they would have to do. They'd get he'd hear them, and he'd run down and turn on his car or truck or whatever, and light the runway. That's how they landed. Money for a regular beacon was appropriated in 1937. Teletype communications were less than ideal. They were supposed to receive a telegram when an airplane was going to be arriving. The telegraph office was in Essex Junction at the railroad station. So someone would have to come out to the airport and deliver the message. Well, often by the time the message got there, the plane had already landed, or it may have landed and departed. So that once the terminal was installed and the Civil Aeronautics Authority had a 135-foot tower installed in Winooski, and that took care of that. Then they could receive and transmit. Then there was the wonderful air traffic control. We think we are in trouble with air traffic control today. They would watch for, with binoculars for planes to come in. And this fellow here on well, he would be on your left side, is, he has a microphone. I don't know what he's doing with it. Who does he talk to? But anyway, he's got a microphone. And the other fellow has a light, which he signals red when it's not safe to land and green when it is. And then we had some celebrities. There was Wiley Post. As we know, he was the one-eyed pilot, as they called him, who went around the world, around the globe flyer. He did that twice, I think. And he visited the airport a couple of times, mostly for the air shows, the air meets. He enjoyed those. The New York City Mayor, Mayor LaGuardia, visited the airport when the inaugural flight to Burlington by the Canadian Colonial Airways in 1939. And my father is there on the left-hand side, and on the right is Willette Foster, who was airport commissioner. I think he was also the president of the Chamber of Commerce at that time, which I discovered later. And of course, Amelia Earhart came to the Burlington Airport. And my mother wrote about her. Those who heard her speak or came in personal contact with Amelia Earhart had to agree that the courage and skill as America's leading aviatrix were exceeded only by her charming personality. She visited the airport for when the Boston, Maine, Central Vermont Airways came in 1934. She was the public relations person for the National Airways, which was, I guess, the Boston, Maine, Central Vermont was affiliated with that. So she was given all kinds of honors. They gave her the key to the city. The Mayor Burke from Burlington gave her a key to the city with quite a celebration. She did go up on numerous trips with passengers. She didn't fly, but she was with the passengers to talk to them and give autographs. It was a very exciting time for them. And when she was done, she asked my father to please give her a ride, plane ride to Albany, where she had to make a connection from Albany to Pittsburgh. And so he gave her the ride. They went through 2 terrific thunderstorms along the way. And when they finally landed safely, she sent him a telegram. And this is what it said: "Harold, I'm sure awfully glad you were on the stick this time and not me." That's a pretty poor photograph, but it's the only one I had, and I just wanted to include that.
Is that open copy?
No, yeah.
Oh my God,
And then in 1939, oh yeah, and Amelia Earhart also came in 1935 to talk to legislature, asking them to please appropriate funds for improving the airfields and facilities, and also to promote aviation. Yeah, and then 1939, my father started the Fly-Right School of Aviation. And that started when Congress appropriated $4 million for a pilot training program. It was just during wartime. And this is training thousands of students many going into service. In 1943 to 44, that's 1 year, they trained 2,600 students, 200 at a time, with 25,000 flying hours. They were very busy. Harold was in charge of flight instruction, and Grace taught meteorology and ground school. They continued to keep the airport running smoothly during that time. And this is a poster, that first slide you saw of the book cover, it was taken, that photo was actually taken for this poster. And this was to advertise the Fly-Right School of Aviation. As you can see, lessons were $2. And these are some of the students. There's some of the instructors with their students, and you can see the airplane there in the background. And this was, I guess, a graduation, I'm not sure, but it was a group of the students in the hangar, and I love the airplanes on their nose over in the edge of the hangar, making space. As my daughter said, it was awfully cold in there. And then in April of 1944, they received notice that the indoctrination program had ended. Mid-April, under strict military secrecy, the students were shipped away under cover of darkness, leaving 57 employees, no work, no money for salaries and expenses. Harold resigned in December of 1944. They moved their flight school to Swanton for a short period of time. And then Grace wrote this thing, and it kind of sums up all of her time at the airport in this one little blurb that she says. I was totally involved with the Burlington Airport. It was our home, our work, our hobby, our social life, our only interest for 10 years, our only child. We were totally and unselfishly dedicated to the growth and promotion of aviation in all its forms. Like born-again Christians, we wanted everyone to believe as deeply and thoroughly as we did in the future of aviation. We pleaded with anyone who would listen, come and watch, take a ride, learn to fly. It's great, it's safe, it's the way of the future. We courted their confidence in every way possible. Our desire for business had to be secondary, as there was so little of it. We were interested only in making a living. If we were interested in only in making a living, our time there would have been very short. We wanted everyone to love flying and believe in it as we did. And this is a 1969. The Thunderbirds came to the airport, and they honored a few people, obviously. And my Uncle George is on the far end, to the left, that's George Hall. And the third one from the left is Grace Pugh. You can hardly see the white hair and the white clean in the background, but that's my mom. And they honored them for their contributions to aviation. And this is when she was in her 80s, and you can see she still loved to fly. So now, I think that was pretty much it. I don't think I have anything else I really needed to say. I do have a few more just photos, if you have time. You want to do that? Okay. Here we go. So there's Harold. That must be while he was dealing the mail. It seems like he was wearing that sort of a cap when he was doing that. And there he is taking a little break. And I like that photo. That's with his walkout too. And I don't know what this airplane is, but I thought it was cute. I found it in her book, and I thought, yeah, we've got to put that in. And this, You can see the chains on the tires. Snow was a real challenge in those years because, and lighting, of course, was another one of their major challenges. But the snow removal, they'd have to plow, and then they'd have to move the lights up onto the top of the snowbank, and then they'd have to plow and move the snowbank. You know, so that was a constant thing. And of course, the runway, the snow get packed and it would be icy, and someone invented chains for the airplanes, and apparently they worked quite well. And here's the Burlington Champlain taxi service. So they're doing that at some point. And I think that's all I have. I do have a quick story that she told if anyone would like to hear it. We purchased an Aranca tail dragger airplane. Harold flew us over to Swanton Airport to pick up the plane to bring to Burlington Airport. I climbed into the pilot seat of the newly acquired airplane. I had trouble taking off toward the hangar as the tail was so heavy, barely skipping over the hangar. Once in the air, I had trouble gaining altitude. Harold, flying next to me, kept motioning to me to push the throttle. I motioned, I had. Then he motioned toward me, trim. I motioned, I had. Finally arriving at the Burlington Airport, I was supposed to use the east-west runway, but because of the situation, I decided to go straight in. Crew fixing the north-south runway with rollers, trucks, and other equipment saw me coming, and they all ran for the woods. I landed safely. Harold immediately ordered the airplane to be checked. They discovered that the tail skid had loosened and fabric around the skid, allowing the accumulation of soil. They vacuumed out a peck of dirt. That's all I have.
Your father?
Yes.
Is he from Plattsburgh?
He was actually from Keysville, New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the family background over there?
He wanted to learn to fly, and I think I told you this story, during Prohibition, he painted signs. He did sign painting. And during Prohibition, things were really pretty tight. So he would paint cars of the bootleggers. Oh. And he would earn enough money, I guess I just discontinued that. So he would earn money to take flight lessons, and he learned how to fly at the Abdobo Airport, which is the Plattsburgh Airport. So he would fly out of Plattsburgh Fair, and he'd go into Burlington quite often. So he was very familiar with the Burlington Airport. But, yeah.
Did he teach your mother to fly, or did she do it
He
independently?
didn't, and I had a photo which I didn't include. But no, she was taught by Curly Mullaney, and I don't know why that was. Probably she never taught my sister or I how to drive either. I think you listen to somebody that's not family better than you do, or maybe you learn. I'm not sure, but that was her.
And when did she get her license then?
She got it in 1938. She had been flying for a number of years before that, but she couldn't afford to have the annual physicals, which cost like $10 a year. So it took her until 1938 to finally decide she could do that. And talking about how tight money was, Harold was paid $50 a month for airport manager position, and as my mother said, she just worked for the airport. She never got paid. It wasn't. She was a teacher, and that's how they managed to support themselves basically. In 1942, I think he started receiving $100 a year. So it was a pretty hard times. Yeah.
Wow.
Did you learn to fly?
I never did. I never went up in an airplane, even an airline, until I was in my 20s. Yeah. And I've only been up maybe a dozen times. No, they were done with the airport by the time they closed down their flight school in Swanton. there were so few people left to teach, actually, after the war. They trained them all. So that kind of petered out. My father moved on to other projects, and my mother went back. Well, my sister and I came along, so that kind of took her time for a few years, and then she went back to teaching. But she taught at South Burlington Central School. Well, she taught in many other places also. But she retired in like 72.
She said at first she didn't have time for a child, so what enabled her to think about having a family? And did you spend a lot of time at the airport
No.
when you were young?
No,
No?
we didn't. My sister and I, and a friend and I, used to ride our bikes over there and hang out, because you could watch the airplanes come and go. And we liked to just go hang out, but no, we didn't spend any time over there. My mother got more involved in the airport again, along toward, after she retired from teaching. There was a friend of hers, Shirley Chevalier, who was working at the airport at the time, got my mother kind of reignited, I guess. And she was a good friend. And I think she's the one that took her up in the plane for that photo, I'm not sure. But she kind of reignited her. And she gave tours at the airport for students to come in, that sort of thing, in her elder years, until she couldn't do that any longer. Yes.
Do you know all the land before the city bought it?
Yeah. She didn't, it was Brownell and somebody else. I can't remember who it was. Yeah, there were two people that I think owned that property.
Are there any other questions? I have a question, and since we have so many history buffs in the audience, maybe someone can answer this. What I found astonishing when I first heard some of these stories was that they disbanded the flight school in 1944.
Yeah.
They must have had a very strong feeling that not only were they going to win the war, that they weren't going to need any more pilots. I find that extraordinary. Does anybody else find that extraordinary? Does anyone have any clue as to why that was? Or, I mean, it was obviously secret.
The military was running their own flight training.
True.
My father-in-law went through training, and he was not, he had no training before he went to the military. They trained him there.
Right. So they were phasing out the private schools first, probably. Yeah, that makes sense.
I guess I would wonder about the climate here. You talked about snow and shades and stuff. It seems to me the logical place to train pilots is in Florida, Texas, Southern California.
I'm sure they were. I'm sure there were.
Why go to northern Vermont for crying out loud?
I'm sure there were others going on at the same time. They couldn't have trained them all, but they did a fair number. Yeah.
Lucy, what's interesting is
Mm.
that the same thing is happening with Beta that happened with this airport back in the 30s. It's spawning a whole new direction with their electric aviation. I mean, they started it with what they had, and now it's continuing, they're duplicating what your mom and dad did at the same place.
And just as a point of interest, we have Nicholas Longo, who was the aviation director at the Burlington Airport, is here today. Thank you for coming. That was good.
Well, thank you so much. That was really fascinating. And some books for sale, and please mingle.
I would just like to say that I thought this was a very interesting family history, and I thought that the speaker's mom was especially brave to learn to be a pilot, and I love the story she had and the way she expressed herself. It was very interesting.
Grace Pugh was my second grade teacher at South Burlington Central, and she never once mentioned that she had been a pilot, so I wish she had.
Yeah.
the airport. I didn't realize it had started so early. And my husband was flying when he was, you know, in the 40s, 50s. But
What was his name?
Marcel Plouffe, yeah. So he enjoyed flying. It was great fun. And one time he came, and my brother and I were opening up the camp at Joe's Pond, and we were watching, and he came over, and he wasn't that good at flying at that point. And he went to turn, and he just slid right into the lake, and you could see he was going down. We didn't have the boats out or anything. Somebody across the way, he had his boat out. He went out and got him, and they spent 30 some odd years trying to find the plane because it just slid down, and the water was murky. They couldn't find it. And it took that long. By the time they found it, there was just a skeleton.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And you're still a local girl.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I didn't realize I didn't realize this history went back that long. So that's great. Yeah, I enjoyed it.